Okay, so before we go to the next sessions, let me briefly talk about macroeconomics. So it will be a session of macroeconomics, and if you have gone through the previous session or the previous video, you will see that we have already talked about macroeconomics and the things related to macroeconomics. But this is a brief video to tell you what is macroeconomics and why you should study macroeconomics. Generally, when you talk about economics, people broadly classify economics into microeconomics and macroeconomics. In macroeconomics, you are looking at the overall economy. What are you doing? Overall economy. This is the big picture. You are zooming it out, how the overall economy works, and nation as a whole. Nation. What do we deal with? We deal with aggregate variables. What is aggregate variables? Last day we discussed, there are two graphs actually, I will come to that. Two graphs, one is ISLM, this is for monetary and fiscal policies, and one is ADAS, that is aggregate demand and aggregate supply. I will come to that in the next videos, because we need to talk about the shifts, we need to talk about the factors affecting these things, short run, medium run, long run, and then a shock will happen and how the equilibrium will happen, and stabilization policies and how your monetary fiscal policies will help to do that. So this is macro. Things we talk about: aggregate variables, employment, or rather people talk about unemployment. There are ratios, there are percentages that can give you an idea about the current scenario of employment or unemployment in a particular nation. Index and all these things are there. GDP, GNP, gross domestic product, gross national product, and then your real GDP, nominal GDP, and all these things, deflator, then your CPI, PPI, and how you talk about all these things. So that inflation, price level, how it is affecting the economy. National income we talked about last day, right? Then your savings, overall price level, obviously we are talking about that, overall price level. Now if I talk about inflation, another thing you should know, that is trade, then your capital flows, how the movement of capital happens, capital movement, and then your investment, all these things we talk about. But these things, unemployment, inflation, GDP, whenever somebody is talking about my macroeconomics, you will see that aggregate variable, aggregate variables, not individual, a single market, because in microeconomics we will talk about a single market. That is how the supply and demand will interact, in individual markets. Goods and services will be there, and how it is affecting. Then we talked about price income substitution and how it is affecting the supply and demand, the shifts. We will talk about those things, but in macro we are talking about all these things. And if I talk about inflation, there are two things you should remember. One is demand pull inflation, one is cost push inflation. So demand pull is when the aggregate demand, this is increased. Now why it is increased? It can be for factors that income is increasing, population is increasing, so monetary and real factors are there, price level is increasing, you have the demand pull. You understand the point. Income is increasing, you are having more demand in the marketplace. population is increasing, more people, they are demanding more, so more demands, and it will go for demand pull inflation, and aggregate demand is increasing, right? The cost push inflation will be when the aggregate supply of goods and services will go down. Now, why it will go down? Suppose a firm is producing. Now, to produce something, what you need? You need the raw materials. So, if the raw materials you need for production, if the raw materials are getting affected, the price is increasing. Suppose fuel price, it is rising. Wage cost, your labor, it is increasing. So your labor, your wage cost, you have to pay more to, to the employee, to the workforce, to the labor you have in your market, in your firm. So the wage is increasing. Fuel price, you need fuel to run your firm, to produce something. Fuel is increasing, fuel price, wage cost is increasing, raw materials, if you have anything else. So the moment that is increasing, your aggregate supply of goods and services, it is going down, because you are supplying less to the marketplace. So that is the cost push, because this is the cost push inflation is happening. Rare, mostly we have the demand pull inflation, because aggregate demand is increasing, income is increasing, more people, more demand, aggregate demand is increasing, demand pull inflation. These are the two things. So for demand pull inflation, again ISLM, if you refer to that, fiscal and monetary policies, that will help you to do the measures for demand pull inflation. Administrative control on price rise and income policy will help in cost push. Income policy, it will affect the wage, and this administrative control on price rise, this fuel and raw materials, this will in turn help in curbing the cost of the raw materials, the wage. So it will take care of those things, and you will tackle cost push. So here for demand push, it is monetary and fiscal policies or measures. This will be demand pull, and administrative control on, one is the price rise and the second thing is income policy. Using these two, you can take care of the cost push inflation, right? Now, later we will talk about the individual, single market supply and demand, elasticity and the shifts, because many people talk about it. We will make it more fun so that you understand what is happening around you in the marketplace and how you as a consumer or as a firm are affecting, the marketplace, the economy, the production, distribution and consumption of goods. Because if you look at it, it will be production, distribution and consumption of goods and services. So the firm is producing, distribution is happening and the consumer is consuming. So production, distribution and consumption. If I talk about marketing, we talked about marketing and economics, behavioral economics, social sciences, all these things we talk about. But you understand one thing, marketing, integrated marketing, communication, advertising, PR, all these things are doing. Push-pull marketing is happening, wholesale, retail, distribution channels, that is making something available to the consumer. The consumer is paying, the consumer is buying. It can be different kinds of goods. It can be luxury, it can be, habitual buying. It can be impulse buying. It can be something you can just go to the groceries and you can buy something. And with that also, you can buy a bottle, you can buy a sachet, depending on the things. Purchasing power, at different places you will have a bottle available more, at different places you will have the sachet available more, because of the pricing capability you are having. The more you can pay, the more you can have. Then one bottle of one thing will cost something, another bottle of another thing will cost something. Maybe say similar thing, similar product of one brand and a different brand will cost in a different way. So if I talk about marketing, 4 P's, product, place, promotion, pricing, all these things, and then branding and how it is affecting the pricing, what power it is having in the marketplace, market power, market share, the brand equity, and all these things. A lot of things are happening. So all these things we discuss in marketing. But when it comes to economics, you have money, you are buying something. The firm is producing something. The firm is incurring some cost, it is generating revenue, it is earning some profits, maximizing the profits, shareholder value maximization, and all these things. Marketplace, the thing is getting available, goods and services, and people are buying. Then from the household, you are giving labor to the firms, because people are going there to work. That is coming from the households only. So I talked about a cycle, I talked about a diagram, how the interactions are happening between households, firms, government, marketplace, capital market, then the labor market, and all these things we discussed. And again, after a few videos we will discuss, but before that you have to understand how all these things are happening, because economics, it is not something jargons we talk about. It is happening all around you. You have to understand what you are doing. Even if you are doing income, how your income is affecting your purchasing power, how income inequality is happening, what you can do, learning more about economics to do that. At different places, if you look at marketing and economics and how you can provide a better service and how you can have more firms, producing more goods and services, your GDP is getting a boost, your economy is getting a boost. We are measuring it with GDP. But economy is growing, economy is having development. So economic growth, economic development, but generally we talk about GDP. It is easy to talk about, GDP, it's a good measure. GNP, some people talk about, there are reasons behind that. We will talk about why you will go for GNP over GDP, some people will go, and then, purchasing power parity and all these things regarding GDP. We will talk about that as well. But you understand the basics of my macroeconomics. Microeconomics, we are talking about a single market, household and farm and all these things, supply, demand, affecting the pricing and all these things. Now everything as a nation as a whole, aggregate variables we are talking about. Monetary fiscal policies, ISLM, aggregate supply, aggregate demand, two very important curves, overall economy and nation we are talking about.